Hey, my name's Chris Lambert, and I'm a co-host on the Watching the Throne, a lyrical analysis of Kanye West podcast, and the number one Kanye West podcast. And this is the reaction video to Kanye West and Charlamagne. This is my 16th time trying to record it. An hour and 45 minutes, almost 2 hours of takes. I have no video editing, so if things go south in the middle of me recording, I just have to start over. And this has been a hard one to talk about, just because the interview itself is an hour and 45 minutes, so there's a lot to unpack. And, there are three main things that jump out to me about this interview, and I just talk about those three things, but the first one gets into the context of when this interview came out and the perception of Kanye at this time of May 1st, 2018, which is probably the most polarized time for Kanye fans, because the Taylor Swift thing was bad, right? In just the sense that, like, oh no, he interrupted this girl and broke political correctness and protocol. The hate that he got for that was what was bad, and people just being so angry at him over something that, like, is rude, but in the grand scheme of things, he was right. Taylor's video was and Beyonce should have won, but all he did was, like, rude. It wasn't like Chris Brown level of attacking Rihanna. It wasn't like drunk driving, killing people. It wasn't anything like with a physical negative effect. It was just rude. But now, everything that's going on with now gets into the realm of politics and how torn our country currently is with politics and how angry we are at each other about politics. And the fact that the current perception of Kanye is one where he has been politically back and forth, and it has people questioning, like, is he now far right? Is he still the progressive that we knew him as? And that typically wouldn't be that big of a deal. But in the current political climate, it's enough to get people to swear off Kanye. It's enough to get people to say that he's now, like, canceled and that we no longer, he's a racist now. And but even though what he's saying is more new, it's a crazy time. And this video, I think, goes a long way to the counter perception of that negative perception, because a lot of the negative aspects of Kanye that are being talked about are people thinking that he's lost his mind, people thinking that he's crazy now, wondering if he needs to get back on medication, and that he's this Trump-supporting monster that wants to build that wall. And that's not the case. You watch this, and you see a thoughtful, intelligent, funny, calm guy that's just, it's very a humanizing interview. And I think that's the first thing that stood out to me, is just that, this is the Kanye that I respect, the Kanye that I admire, the Kanye that I care about. And, he discusses Trump at times, and it's not what people have thought in terms of his support. It's more just the fact that Trump won. It's not Trump's policies. It's not Trump's politics. He talks about not being political. It's just that Trump won, and that opens up the conversation about who can be president in a way that nothing else has, right? We just thought politician, politician, politician. And on the one hand, having politicians as a president is good because they understand our political system. On the other hand, you're also limited by the fact of who is a politician. And politicians are getting shittier and shittier and shittier. And it's getting harder to navigate as the parties become more just at odds with each other rather than for the American people. So the idea that you have this non-politician come in and win the presidency, even though Trump is a monster and a shitty president, it shows that, maybe we could have somebody that's not Trump and is better than what, Paul Ryan would be as a president. Could you imagine? Like, or Mike Pence. Like, fuck. Those are our options, or having like somebody that's a celebrity, non-politician, but that would do a far better job. There have to be great people out there that would make a great president that aren't politicians. And that's the potential that Kanye saw with Trump. And that's one of the things he admires and finds so fascinating about Trump. And he keeps talking about that on Twitter, in this interview, in the Kanye and T.I. discussion that was posted on his YouTube channel just the other night, last night. So this video goes a long way to, I think, reassuring Kanye fans that he isn't this maniac that he might seem to be from the tweets, and the lack of context, the lack of tone, the lack of just being able to see him talk about it. But then, as you can see down here on the, I can't actually point on my screen, but that Kanye West stirs up TMZ newsroom over Trump's slavery, that happened today. And whatever goodwill this interview would have brought about, it showed the version of Kanye that everybody feared was the version of Kanye. Him talking about slavery seems like a choice because it happened for 400 years, and that seems more of a mental thing at that point than a physical thing, which has sent people... I mean, it's a really dumb thing to say, given what we know about the system that created slavery and how just intense it was, how holistic it was, how, like, it wasn't just one group here in West Virginia was slave owners. It was like the whole nation for 150 years was okay with slavery. And then it kind of started to turn. But it still took another, like, 150 years for people to be like, oh no, let's stop this. And even then, you had many that didn't want to stop it and that had intense and, like, lethal systems in place to stop slaves from leaving. So Kanye's saying that in the TMZ room, and then, for a lot of the interview, he's yelling at the room and being the performer Kanye, the ranting Kanye, that's saying things that are kind of half thought through, that you can kind of get the idea that he's getting at, but what he's saying isn't the right way to say it, that kind of confirms to people that are fearful or wanting to hate Kanye that this is who Kanye is now. And it's just so weird that in one day you get both sides of the coin. You get this version of Kanye, and then you get the other version of Kanye. So you have the one that Kanye supporters that want to support him, that want to find the good. This is the thing that you want to point to and be like, okay, this is our Kanye. But then for the people that are, like, ready to... And there's Kanye fans that don't want to hate him. I know how I'm saying this. There's Kanye fans that don't want to hate them, but they have their lines. And, this Kanye is not crossing those lines, but the TMZ Kanye crossed those lines and jumped over them. And it's just very fascinating to think that on one day you can see two perspectives on this person that get at two different narratives of who that person is. And it leaves me wondering, like, how much is this... Did he know he was going to do this? Is this part of some grand, like, thing that he's doing? Or is this just Kanye? Is this just poetic happenstance coming together? And trying to work through that and thinking about that keeps sending me for such a loop, because part of me, as somebody that deconstructs art all the time, whether it's Kanye lyrics, we have a film criticism website, I'm an author myself, spending so much time analyzing art, it's hard to look at this and not look at it from the artistic perspective and recognize that this is in line with what an artist would do if trying to address duality, but that it could just also be Kanye getting at having like the manic side and the calm side. And what does that mean? It's fascinating. But then it's also, scary because we care about Kanye, and, you watch the TMZ interview and it's hard at times not to be like, oh, like, is he, like, I watch this and I'm like, he's okay. And then you watch that and you're like, oh, is he okay? He talks about, he doesn't really get into it in this, but his opioid use and using 2 a day for so long, and that he had liposuction because he was so concerned with, would people judge him for putting on weight the same way that they judged Rob Kardashian. And it's crazy to think that Kanye, that we know that's so narcissistic and ultra confident, not even narcissistic, I'm trying to think of the things people had said, but just the confident Kanye would worry about liposuction and people calling him fat. And that comes up in this interview. There's a talk about perception and vulnerability in here where he talked about like losing, like feeling so in need of validation and so worried about being perfect and worried about what everybody was thinking of him, that's a lot of what went into the breakdown, which he dubbed in this as the breakthrough. And hearing that, Kanye's just a person like anybody else. Of course he's concerned about perception and validation, and most of the time somebody is that ego driven and so outwardly egotistical, or not egotistical, but outwardly self-confident. It's a reaction to a worry about perception and a worry about esteem and self-esteem, a worry about how other people will perceive you. So you try to control the image and be like, I'm this person, look at me. And I know I'm getting kind of armchair psychologist here, but I like analyzing and deconstructing. But when Kanye gets into, that's just one situation, but throughout the interview, so much of what he talks about comes back to this concept of respect and not getting the respect that he needs. And that's kind of the second major part of this. The first is just, in this, we can tell that he is in a good spot, that he can be calm and intelligent and just thoughtful. He's not just a maniac all the time. And even the TMZ, that could just be part of his performance art. I don't know. It could just be him, But the second thing is that respect and not getting respect seemed to be a huge part of this interview. From his concern about Life of Pablo not getting the radio plays that it should have, that how Jay-Z addressed the money that he gave to Kanye, was actually part of Kanye's tour deal. So it was money that Kanye got as the tour deal. Like, if it wasn't coming from Jay-Z, it would have come from anybody else. It wasn't like Jay-Z was just like, Kanye, I'm going to give you $15 million because I love you. It was money Kanye earned. But as Jay framed it as gave, that was the thing that bothered Kanye, which gets back to respect. He felt that Jay-Z framed it in a way that disrespected Kanye, or did it give him the respect that he had earned? And Kanye talks about Obama at one point, and most of the conversation focuses on Obama disrespecting Kanye and not respecting Kanye. When he talks about the fashion industry, he talks at one point about being disrespected and not feeling that they were giving him the respect. When he talks about outlets writing about him and calling him a rapper, especially white publications calling him a rapper, that's a sign of disrespect. And he didn't use the word respect or disrespect, I don't think, but just when you're grouping everything that he said, the recurring theme, if you're trying to group them all together, would be respect versus disrespect. And talking about Nike, how he's doing right now, and also himself being concerned with disrespecting others.
When we did the original Yeezy at Nike, and he was there with me, I was on a plane with him, I was sketching, and he said, look at this sketch, I'm gonna give this guy a chance, and he put me next to Tinker Hatfield. And it's me and Don C making the first Yeezy with Tinker Hatfield and Mark Parker.
So he's talking about how he had talked badly about Mark Parker and owed him an apology for the disrespect, and that Mark Parker had really helped him out.
Express that as a father, and and when my karma comes, I'll accept it in real time. Like Kill Bill.
So
when that karma comes to get you,
I don't have an answer about it, but it was just something that jumped out to me about this idea of him respecting others respecting him being concerned with disrespecting others, and being concerned about others disrespecting him. That was a recurring theme. And then the last thing that jumped out to me is information. He has a few points where he talks about information and how information was important to him. He says that information is more important than validation, because with information he can do something, and he's only as good as the information he has. And that's one of the things that he was feeling frustrated about, was that he's having dinner with people and has friends that have information about business, and they're not sharing it with them. And all he wants is the information so he can do the things that he wants to do. But if he's limited information, he can't do what he needs to do. And his consumption of information has made him very well-rounded. There are famous architects that talk about having worked with Kanye, and that what surprised them was how much he knew about architecture, and how it felt like working with a peer rather than a client. And there's famous artists that have talked about, when they talked with Kanye about painting and fine art, that he knew it was like a colleague, somebody that just knew everything about it. He learns at a very high level, obviously, for him to have the success that he's had. So he has this emphasis on the information that he has. And when he talks about Jay-Z, he talks about how he didn't have the information that he needed to make things work with Jay-Z, that there was something that was missing. And not work in general, but just in the situation that they found themselves in. And he talks about how important Scooter Braun has been to his success, because Scooter had information and shared it with Kanye about business and being a business person and running a business, and that information was everything to him. So you get this idea of how reliant Kanye is on information, but he talks at one point about how when everything with Beyonce, and saying that Beyonce wouldn't perform at the VMAs unless she won. And he said that on stage to everybody. And that was one of the things that made Jay-Z mad and caused such friction in their friendship. And Kanye admits in this interview that he had heard that secondhand. It wasn't Beyonce that said that to him. He never checked it with Beyonce. He doesn't know if that was true or not. It's just what he heard, and he spoke on it. And I think that's something that a lot of people that have followed Kanye for a long time could probably have guessed. And it's something that Kanye himself has talked about. Even in this interview, he talks about being in the stream, and that, the stream of consciousness, he's sharing what he's feeling. He's not going to say the right thing. He doesn't always have all the information, but he's speaking based on what he's feeling. And I think that's one of the things that gets him into trouble. And him talking about it here just gives context to that, is the fact that he's consuming information, but he's not an expert on everything all the time. There's times where he's just at the beginning stages of understanding. And because so much of his talk has turned to politics, and he's so reliant on learning from other people about politics, that's one of the things that we're seeing on Twitter, is that he has this knowledge of politics that's not that's as good as the sources that he's getting it from. And that's one of the things that made his TMZ interview today so problematic, is that one of the sources he's getting information from right now is Candace Owens, who in and of herself is a problematic speaker, in the fact that a lot of the talking points she has are highly contested and debated, because a lot of her points are based on a very narrow and limited perspective, or based on a understanding of history that's not quite, I mean, sometimes based on outright lies, or based on like a twisted reality of that. Her major thing is that slavery, or that the current issue with the black community is victim mentality versus victor mentality. And she is post-racism, post-slavery in her thinking and conversation. And she's been seen with Kanye multiple times for this last week. She's obviously been having like intense conversations with Kanye about modern politics regarding the black community, Democrats and Republicans, and the historic context of Democrats and Republicans, and her views on slavery. And if that's the source of information for Kanye on a lot of these topics, it's going to be very problematic for a while. And that's one of the things that's going to be, I guess we're going to have to work through as Kanye fans, or have to ask ourselves as Kanye fans, like, how patient do we want to be with somebody that's as outspoken as Kanye is, who's speaking on a topic that he's just learning about from a source that isn't liked by a lot of people? Because, I mean, not to say that Candace Owens doesn't have some ideas to what she's saying that are true. Like, I think in general that people can have a victim mentality rather than a victor mentality. I think that that's a general thing that not everybody suffers from, but that people suffer from. I have friends that I can point to them and be like, yeah, they do have a victim mentality and they're limited by it. But when it comes to using that as a way to deny racism in America, that's insane. And we know that Kanye, in this interview, we know Kanye at like times since interacting with Candace, he doesn't reject racism. He knows that racism is very much a thing. It's just he's in this state of mind where he talks about, I accept that racism is there and I want to move past it. I accept that this is our like historical background is slavery, but I want to move past it and start shaping what our future is going to be. And I think that that's admirable, but how he's talking about it and rejecting the past outright, I think is problematic. I mean, I'm Jewish, and I can't tell you how many Passovers I've gone to where we still go through the story of the Jewish people leaving Egypt. And I don't think you have to reject your past in order to move on. So, but if Kanye has Candace telling him that, it's just going to be interesting, because obviously friends of Kanye are texting him. We've seen the text from John Legend, Talib Kweli, Charlamagne himself educating Kanye on this. And it's, I mean, it's going to be strange to watch unfold and see where Kanye comes out on this topic. And is it something where he's going to stay across that line for a lot of people. Is it for some other people that line doesn't exist and they're just ride or die? Um, I don't think that we have an answer currently, and I don't think I don't I wouldn't encourage people to move their line or that they need to have patience or accept the things Kanye's saying. I do think that he's coming from a good spot and a well-intentioned spot, and that he does misspeak a lot, but that he's a well-intentioned person and a good-hearted person. And even when he said that in the TMZ interview, and somebody God, I keep forgetting his name, I even looked it up, Van Lathan. When Van Lathan stood up to him and was like, I think what you're saying is wrong, dumb, hurtful, and Kanye went up immediately to apologize and hugged the guy and, said some good things afterwards, said some more complicating things afterwards. But you can see that Kanye wanted to do right and wanted to do well. And I think that that comes back to everything about Kanye. Despite the enormous confidence, you can see in this interview the times where Charlamagne praises him, which was just right there. Like the expression that Kanye gets on his face. His confidence, while there, he's still somebody that, like anybody else, needs validation, wants to help people and appeal to people. He's just not an arrogant monster that doesn't care what anybody else thinks. So I feel like he's gonna get there. I don't think people have to be on the ride, especially if it's frustrating for them. But we're gonna be here detailing it all, talking about it all. This is our project, being part of the Kanye discussion and facilitating that conversation of, despite whatever he's been saying, one of the most important artists of the 21st century, and that's not going to change. And somebody has to be here to lead the conversation, not lead the conversation, but help facilitate the conversation, add to the conversation, and document. So that's going to be us. And I hope you'll join us, and I hope you'll share your thoughts on everything that's going on, positive, negative, and have these conversations. Because I think at the end of the day, what Kanye is trying to do is generate the conversation. And he's very concerned about, the state of things. It may be on a different level than it was on College Dropout, but I don't think he's ever stopped caring about the situation people are in, and that this is still that. It's just being communicated in the Kanye way. Okay, so that's gonna do. I think I finally got through this in a way, but one more thing I want to show in this video is just where it gets to is really fascinating. They eventually leave the room. Kanye starts showing them the Yeezys, and one of the things, Kanye at times does start to get kind of more flustered in some of the talking points, but whenever you see him come back to fashion, it's just so knowledgeable and so focused and so, I don't know. It makes me want to be that person that's has that knowledge and confidence in what I'm talking about, and be in the spot that he's in, to have the power that he has in the subject that he loves, which I need to start writing way more books. And then they get out to this property, and this is cool. Kanye bought 300 acres of land, which a huge financial investment, by the way. But he bought this land. This is his property, and he's going to be developing communities on the property. And that's such a huge goal. And it's going to be something, does it happen? Does it not happen? But when you're looking at the long-term future of Kanye, it seems like this is going to be one of his major projects. And, I've had times where I've wanted to design schools, like a college, not like the layout, but the actual, how the school operates and the curriculum. I wanted to design cities. My first novel, Killer and Victim, has a fictional American city that uses a new model of government. I love that stuff, and I want to do that. But I don't have the resources to do that. Kanye has the resources to do that, so I stick to fiction. But he's actually in a spot where he's bought land and is going to do it. But then they get this nice shot. You can just see it progressing into sunset.
And of course, I always know what it is. This documentation.
So cool. And we're just gonna leave with the last minute of this.
We're standing on my first property.
300 acres.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be one of the biggest real estate developers of all time. Like what Howard Hughes was to aircrafts and what Henry Ford was to cars. And just the relationships that I have with architects, my understanding of like space and sacred proportions, just this vibe, this new energy. Like, I'm tired of the McMansions, all the Spanish roof homes and stuff like that. Like, that shit whack, bro. Like, everybody house whack. It's trash, bro. I don't go to, except for unless it's like Howard Backen or something, it's like one of the few architects that I like their homes.
I was going to ask you what's next, because Ye's always predicted what he was going to be. So that's the goal?
Yeah, we're going to develop cities.
So fucking Kanye. But like, hell yeah. Develop cities, Ye. But, to the people that have talked about that this isn't the same Kanye, this is a college dropout Kanye, and Never Let Me Down Kanye, I think Kanye is the same that he's always been. It's just Kanye is very fascinated by what's around him. The information that he has. And he had X information when he was in Chicago. He had Y information when he was making these albums. He had Z information post becoming a superstar. And I can understand people being like, he's talking about like mansions and being tired of mansions and that he's going to change the mansion game. How is this the same guy that was working at the Gap? And on the one hand, like, I get it. He's not going to be talking about the same things at all. But on the other hand, I still, as Kanye says, like, if you're a fan of him, you're a fan of yourself. I still find that insanely empowering. We're not all musical geniuses, right? But the fact that we've all, I think, had minimum wage jobs, and the fact that you're not limited by that you have some thing that you could be doing that could get you from there to talking about fucking mansions that you're going to build and changing the mansion game, that's empowering. And I think it gets back to his mental prisons talk and all of that. Such a strange and interesting time. But I guess until tomorrow and whatever else we'll find. I'm going to record the TMZ reaction video tomorrow. Maybe. We'll see. But we recently released our podcast episode on Ye versus the People. You can find the YouTube version or get the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, wherever. And yeah. Thanks for watching. Oh, we also have this book available. If you like the kind of analysis that we do and want to support us, the Yeezus book is a first of its kind deconstruction of Kanye's albums, but specifically one album, Yeezus. But it's narrative, thematic, production, entire deconstruction that will change the way that you view the album. And this is a long time coming from me, Travis, Martin Connor of Rap Analysis, and Donald Martin of the Most Unruly YouTube channel. All of us have talked about Kanye for a long, long time in the professional work that we do. So putting all of our knowledge together in this book is exciting. And then you can also just follow us on Twitter at Kanye Podcast, or find us on Patreon, patreon.com/Kanye Podcast. We're trying to get up to $300 a month so we can consistently pay artists to make shirts that are these unique, one-of-a-kind Kanye-inspired shirts for people to have some cool Kanye merch to wear. So thanks for bearing with me through this, and till next time, cheers.